Scene one, Apple, take one.
Hi, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this bonus interview originally from AOF Magazine. I used to interview filmmakers both for print articles and audio interviews. I was also the AOF technical director. Unfortunately, AOF is no longer around due to the passing of founder Del Weston. I had lost all of my original footage, or so I thought. I just found the original interview with Cameron Dunn, who was featured in season 1 of Film Notes. But this interview happened several years before that, and I thought I would share it now that I have found the footage. Please enjoy this interview originally from AOF Magazine.
Hi, everyone. I'm Borza, and welcome to another interview for the AOF MegaFast magazine. I am here with my good friend Cameron Dunn from Australia, who I met when I was in film school. And I'm really excited not only to have reconnected with him so that we can catch up, but also he has a lot going on in his professional makeup and effects world. And we're going to get to that. But first, I just told him that I'm really excited to hear from his perspective the story of how we met, because that was way back, I think, in 2010. So, Cameron, welcome to the interview. Welcome to AOF MegaFest magazine. And yeah, let me know your version of this story.
I guess the best way to put it was, I remember I was working on a film for a student that was, I believe, a year ahead, and he described, and I remember him turning around and saying, "Oh, there's these two guys in the year below me, and oh my God, they're mental. They will love you." Now, with the description of they're mental, naturally the worst case scenarios were going through my head. That yeah, I had no idea what to expect with that kind of a description. So I remember we finished shooting that day, spent the next what must have been 3 hours wiping up blood off the floor of the location, and then head back to the school to just get all the gear out. And I lived not too far away from the school at the time, so I could just basically scab a lift back and head straight home. I go in, and the first one of the two people comes up, which was a mutual friend of ours, Michael Strickland. And I'm just like, oh my God, this guy really loves his gore and effects stuff. And then within 10 seconds, I believe you were down behind him, and I'm like, these two guys, and very quickly we hit it off. So I mean, the director, I think it was Dave Ostrom, that was his name. That was the guy who first gave me the description. And then very quickly we hit it off. So it was because both of you came down immediately. You were like, "Oh, we've got ideas for this. We would love to get you on board for this." And I mean, naturally, when people are already coming to me with like fully formed ideas and so forth, I'm gonna get excited, because I'm like, the gears are already turning in my head on how I could do these things. I think you were already talking to me about a feature you had called Storage, I think it was.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I remember when you gave me the script for Lesbian Western, and I saw a lot of the elements that had evolved eventually from that. You were talking about that, and I'm like, can I read a script of it? Yeah, I don't think even when it came to working with other people, I'd just hit it off that quickly. I absolutely loved every second of it. And I mean, how many years later? Now it's a while now.
It's been over 10 years now. And that's the other thing that I think speaks highly of indie film, is quite often, because there's not a lot of people on the set, there's not a lot of money, but there's a lot of creativity, and people are super flexible. They're doing different things on the set, or 5 different jobs or what have you. And that's one of the reasons that I always really liked working with you, is because we could totally hit it off as friends, but at the same time we elevated each other work wise. And like the 4 projects we worked on, where it was my project and you were on it, I found that the more I like consulted with you beforehand to talk about like the vision and how to do things, the more I was prepared on set. So can you talk a little bit about the collaboration that you as a makeup and effects person usually have when you're on set with people, and if there's like a best case, worst case scenario for that?
Oh, I mean, best case scenario for that would definitely be under the category of, you know, like, yeah, you hit it off and like you can kind of crack the little jokes in there if, and if the director's just kind of going like, oh yeah, I want to do something like this. And let's say it's something where the director describes and on a practical level isn't that feasible. And you can go, I don't think that's going to work, but here's what we can do that's similar or very close to it, and or can bring about the same effect. Worst case scenario I usually find is when egos start coming into play, where you go, I'm not really sure we can do that, and they start taking offense to the idea that you, and it's not that you've said no, you've just kind of gone, well, this, and I mean, it's a curse of the industry, egos, I think. But the like, yeah, the and yeah, like it does happen sometimes. But the I mean, majority, especially indie films, I think, because there's, you know, people are just trying to get that vision out there. And especially when they look at the bank account of the budget and so forth and go, okay, yeah, I see what he means. I had not too long ago, a guy was pitching a film and he had this whole big creature design he wanted to do and so forth. So very quickly, when I'm hearing all this information coming to me, my first thought is this is going to cost a lot. And then when I brought it to his attention, that I'm like, okay, look, materials alone, this is going to cost quite a few grand already. And then he's like, oh, really? And I'm like, yeah. However, what's successful for a lot of horror-based films is, don't show the creature as much. That way we can get away with doing, things. And I remember he showed me the results of it at the end, and it looked brilliant because, when you don't see it, and especially for horror films, your imagination does a better work than anything you see anyway. So, yeah. I almost feel like I was actually almost talking down my job when I said that, actually.
But it's true, though. It's whether it's Alien or Jaws or any of those things, it's the thing that you don't quite see that is so terrifying, because your imagination is the most terrifying thing that there is. So I would definitely agree with that. But that being said, I think that when there is something on screen, whether it's some violence or some gore or some kind of an effect, or it's a monster, it's a fight scene, it's somebody getting their arm broken or stabbed or shot or whatever it is, for all the stuff you don't see, when you do see something, it's so much more effective. But if you just saw it all the way through the whole movie, you kind of like get numb to it. It doesn't have that impact.
And because it gave him that bit of a restraint on it, and a lot of times I've seen, like, with those bits of restraints, creativity can fly, because all of a sudden you're going, okay, I have to work a way around this. A lot of times it would end up with a better result than the original intention. Back to the topic of bad experiences, for example, I've had ones where people go, oh, okay, I want this, this. I'll give you $200 for it. And I'm sitting there thinking, no, I'm not going to be able to do it for that price. And then when I tell them that, they're like, oh, but it's my film's this, that, and the other. And I'm like, look, I understand it's your baby and you're proud of it. I mean, let's face it, everyone great. We're proud of our work. Well, to a degree. I mean, it's usually either that or we stare at it with loathing until it becomes good. But yeah, some will turn around and go, oh, but this is what I have. I'm only sticking with this. And yeah, being incredibly stubborn is one of the biggest roadblocks I've seen with it. And it's usually, like I said earlier, usually due to ego at play. And I think it's like, especially in the indie field, it's like, it is definitely not something you can really hold when it comes to getting a good final product out at the end.
So especially in the indie world, there's either, I think there's two main camps: either people that have been trying to get stuff done with kind of budgets, and then they don't, so they try to reduce the budget down to like, well, here's what I've got, so here's what I'll do. Or I think they're new people who are trying to do kind of some of their first work. But either way, there's usually a constraint there. So if So to my mind, I would say probably the two biggest constraints are either time or money. So can you talk a little about those two? Like, I'm sure you've had times where it's like, so we've got the budget to pay you, but we only have 3 days to get all this done. And you're like, what? No, it's going to take a week. But on the other hand, you have the difficulty, like you were saying, like, hey, we have $200, and you're like, there's no way, $200. So which for you is the more difficult thing? Is it the time restraint or the budget restraint? What would you say?
I'd say time restraint is usually the harder one out of the two, because it's with budget constraints. If you've got if you've got no money but plenty of time, you can push, that way. Say, for example, budget can be stretched a lot further for certain things like, oh, okay, I can't do, say, a high quality silicon prosthetic and so forth, but if with that extra time, I can make it with, say, latex, which is a lot cheaper, and I can spend more time detailing it and so forth, so it looks to a higher quality than just a cheap latex mask kind of thing. Yeah, I'd say time is definitely the hardest one, especially if, if you're juggling multiple projects at once, it's a nightmare, to which I've unfortunately done to myself a few too many times. Yeah, time is definitely the harder one out of the two. And I mean, when it comes to budgets, like, I do understand, sometimes people can't get the budgets they want, but I mean, and it's where the flexibility I mentioned earlier comes in. Yeah, time wise, you can sit there, focus, and even if it's like, I've had times where they've had more time and the director's gone, oh, I'll give you a hand with it. And obviously certain things that are in the area of training, you're like, don't touch it. But other times where it's like just that extra pair of hands will help out a lot. And yeah, it's helped out plenty of times with things like that. Like I said, I think time wise, if you have the time, you can get a lot of stuff, plenty of things done at a really good quality. And I mean, most films are like that. It's either time or money, not both.
Over on like the performer side, because you mentioned the creature film and some other things. Obviously, if you have someone, whether it's a zombie picture or just a fight scene or something, the actors are going to have a lot of time kind of in the chair getting made up. So for people who are performers, maybe they haven't done something like a sci-fi or a horror film where there is a lot of prosthetics and a lot of makeup time. Can you talk about some of the process or like do's and don'ts or recommendations you might have for them so that they understand, like, okay, you're going to be on set at 8 o'clock, you need to be here at 6 because it's going to take 3 hours and you just have to be patient, but also, realize that they're going to have maybe fake teeth or lenses in their eyes or whatever it might be.
In my experience with that, when it comes to productions and if there's heavy prosthetics involved, I always try and push for like a test run and so forth. So that way, when it comes to on set on the day, the actor knows what they're in for. And I mean, if say you're not permitted that due to, again, time, budget, etc., one of the best things, the best thing you can do is create just a relaxing, friendly environment for the actor. Then. So, they come in, say hi, have a quick 5-minute chat or something first. Don't just get them in and be like, right, you chair. Because, naturally they're going to be annoyed. Funny enough, I think the biggest frustration side I've ever really had with it is getting them to put their phone down to get bits done. But usually, which is again usually negated by just engaging in conversation the whole time. And yeah, I mean, most actors I've worked with have been really great, friendly people. It's you get along with them. If you get along with them, great, makes it even easier. And actually talk through what you're doing with them is another big thing. So that way, if you say, okay, I'm just going to put, this bit on your cheek just underneath your eye, for example, they're not going to go, oh, why are you coming near my eye? Yeah, just talking through the process with them is a big thing. And the one word you never want to use when they're in the chair, oops. Because naturally they're going to think, and it's probably something like okay, I can just hold that down, reglue it, looks fine. But in an actor's mind, you've suddenly ruined the whole thing and they're going to be sitting in the chair for another 18 hours. So definitely Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of alternate wording you can use for that, along the lines of just like, oh, okay, we'll just move that there. Like, as long as you keep the talk about what you're doing positive, they're not gonna, they're not gonna let their imagination take over with what you're doing.
Yeah, that's I found it very true about everything. Is try and put a positive spin on it. It's very helpful. So I want to ask one more thing before we start talking about your new ventures. And so we just talked about kind of some recommendations you have for working with actors. So if you were going to give kind of a teachable moment, let's say, to either young or inexperienced filmmakers that have, like I once was, where I had visions of, these epic horror and action filled scenes. I did stunts, so I love fight scenes and I love blood and violence and all that stuff. And learning how to do that for me happened a lot because I went through the stunt academy. And so I even though I didn't know a lot about makeup and effects, I knew about the practicality of it because of the stunt work. But if you haven't had that, I think you are going to come in cold and you're not necessarily going to understand, like you said, some of those restrictions in either time or money. So if you were going to give a big tip or kind of a big lesson to people that are thinking about doing projects, whether they're an actor or a writer director, that does have a lot of blood, gore, makeup, and effects, what's the biggest thing that you want them to know?
I think one of the most important things is to have fun with it. I've had films where, it's just been like, oh, we want more blood, more blood, more blood, more blood, more blood, more blood, more blood. You practically got a swimming pool of the stuff by the end, but everyone's having fun with it. And especially if you're starting out, like, don't sit there expecting like, it's the next Spielberg film kind of thing, or, especially if it's an indie, like, and understand like, what a massive budget makes a difference on. Because yeah, if you've got a small budget, you can have the great ideas, but then learn how to work them into a way that's actually feasible. Actually, honestly, more than anything else, do as much pre-production as possible. It's the more stuff you have organized beforehand, the less things will go wrong. Don't get me wrong, there's still things that will go wrong. It's just the nature of the beast. But yeah, like making sure you if you can sit there and go like, okay, but what if this happens? Okay, but what if this happens? Okay, but what if this happens? You'll find you'll be able to eliminate so many problems that you would have gotten you would have been dealing with. So let's say it's, oh, but what if it rains on this day and we're shooting and we want to shoot this big park scene? Okay, get on the day it's raining. Okay, cool. Well, we've got this scene we can shoot instead, which is at a location that we can pretty much go in and out of at any time. Let's go shoot that instead. So you haven't lost time, you haven't really lost money, and you can come back and shoot the park scene later without as much risk. It'll be, letter to the council kind of thing.
Yeah, you're right. And that's one of the most valuable things that I was taught at film school. And actually the producing teacher said, which I'll never forget, if you kill yourself in pre-production, your production will be easy. So yeah, I very much echo that sentiment. I would encourage everybody, and especially when you're employing somebody like who's a specialist, whether it's a fight coordinator, safety officer for any kind of a stunt work, driver, or any kind of makeup and effects person, get them in pre-production, have a meeting, and even if it's on Zoom or something, really get into the details of like, here's what I want in this fight. Are there weapons or not? Are there going to be, broken bones or not? Are they going to be showing stab wounds or not? What kind of stuff are we going to see on scene and on screen rather? Because that way the stunt people or the effects people will have the time to also help you kind of elevate your vision and make it even better. And I found that when I work with stunt people or people like Cameron, they always say, oh, you know what we could do? And I'm like, oh, I never thought of that. So it's really fantastic. And I want to make sure we get to this. So I'm going to skip really quickly to your new venture with Blood Guy FX, because when we worked together, it was you and you were like a one-man band, so now you've got this new thing going. So talk to me about what you're doing now and where you want to go with it.
Yeah, I'm starting up my own little effects studio. At the moment, we're a team of 4 people, which is myself, Rebecca, Mark, and Ricky. What we're aiming at doing is just being able to bulk make items that are regularly used in films and so forth. Because with it, I especially want to help out smaller productions with it. So let's say, when everyone needs to get the zombie film out of their system in film school, as a example, like, and someone goes, oh, but we need all this. We need some severed limbs. Okay, cool. Well, we can, just get a bunch of them from here for this price, because it's not going to match a particular actor, for example, but it's a bulk item you can get. So it's like, oh, we've got this massive scene of someone getting ripped apart. Well, we're not actually watching it getting torn off, so we can just go, okay, boom. I've actually started learning a bit of animatronics and stuff with it as well, so I could do some higher grade ones that actually move, which was a lot harder than I thought, but I'll get there. And that's the thing. I just want to be able to go, okay, here's these items, just get them off here, go nuts. Because that way people can go, oh yeah, we've done this, and you're not hiring someone to specifically make this based on the actor, which, you could get 5 of them for the cost of getting one guy to do it kind of thing. It's like, and I don't mean it to doing it to try and step on anyone's toes or anything like that. I just want smaller productions to have an easier time being able to, make the things they want. And yeah, I just think it's much easier that, because I've seen plenty of times where they've gone, oh yeah, we've got this thing where, this dude's head gets chopped off, but the dude's got long hair, you don't really see their face. Makes it easier. And that's the thing. It's because that way it helps smaller budget productions do take shortcuts to end with a higher quality product. And I think also it encourages the thinking outside the box I mentioned earlier. So they can go, oh well, we've got these here. Oh okay, well this person needs to die this way. Well, we've got this spare arm we've got. So let's have them, get beaten to death with their severed arm or something like that. It's, suddenly it just gives a whole nother realm of those kind of things. And I mean, also on that area, I mean, the amount of times you see, even outside of film, people like cosplayers and stuff like that, they usually need props along those lines, which, getting a decent quality one is very few and far between. It's pretty much you have to hire someone to do it. So I just think it's a kind of area that I think a lot of people would definitely have a focus, an interest towards, to help out their production in the long term. And yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm all for helping a production save money.
I'll tell you one last story before we wrap up, which speaks exactly to that and to your earlier point about being organized and having pre-production. I did work on a feature zombie film called Theater of the Dead in Canberra. It took place in a theater, hence Theater of the Dead. The basic story is there's a play and the director isn't happy. So he brings the actors and the crew in and he says, basically God damn it, we're going to stay here all night if we have to. No one's leaving until we get everything right. So of course, while they're locked inside, the zombie apocalypse happens outside and nobody knows because they're stuck in the theater. And then in the middle of the night, they go out for pizza or something and the zombies come in and now chaos. Well, they had most of the scenes all scripted out. And yet there was a lot of scenes where it just says zombie attack. And the thing that was so great was we had 20 or 30 extras who were all just done up in old clothes and they splattered them with blue and white, body paint. And then they bloodied all the clothes up because in the background, you're just watching a bunch of people who look like zombies. And it didn't matter that they reused the same people over and over, or sometimes they would have someone with a coat that had been all slashed open and then they put fake guts on the floor. And then after they shoot the scene, they would just take the jacket off and the same quote zombie would then be a different death in a different scene because you just needed the bodies and you were able to kind of reuse some of the blood and gore that you had and some of the old clothes that you had over and over and over because you were just reusing the same people. And so I saw that was a really smart way to be smart, not only with the extras that they had, but also with the kind of effects that they had on hand. And they didn't have, that I can remember, a lot of fake legs and arms and things like that, but they just had various buckets of gore stuff, stuff that looked more solid or more wet, depending. And so you're right, it was a great way because, and I don't know how they how they got all, but I mean, there were like buckets of different kinds of blood and different kinds of gore. And they would just be like, oh, in this scene, and someone would every once in a while just take a bucket and just dump it on the ground so that the ground would, reflect the light and look like there had been carnage and all that kind of stuff. So it was a great combination of what you're talking about, which is kind of buying bulk effects and being able to use them for the entire production, as well as they were organized enough to know what they wanted, but they were also flexible enough on the day to just allow kind of spontaneity. And I thought that was a really good lesson for me. And I would kind of advise other people to allow someone like Cameron on the day to say, I just had a great idea, let's do this. And you go, oh, great, yes, we'll do that. No one had thought of it before, but also being organized enough that, like you said, if it does rain, you're not like, what do we do?
That literally hits the nail on the head of the kind of thing I want to be able to do is and yeah, the whole thing, like that zombie film sounded hilarious to work on. Like that sounded great. And yeah, that's it. It's like, say zombie film, zombie swarm a guy, start eating him. You're gonna want that arm that flies up in the air. It's it's almost lore at this point to have that in there. It's almost become it's like the Wilhelm scream of zombie films. But yeah, being able to reuse stock, and like you were saying with actors, just slight change of this. I mean, the amount of zombie films I've worked on where they've gone, we don't have enough extras, do you want to jump in there? And I've jumped in there. And I've had ones where similar kind of thing where it's like, oh, they're in this scene, I run up at them while they're in the lift, and then suddenly they've gone to this new location and suddenly I'm there, but we're shooting on a different day, so I was dressed differently anyway. And I just made sure it was different makeup on my face. And honestly, if I wasn't sitting there looking for me, I wouldn't notice. But it naturally in those positions, you just want to be like, "That's me."
That's the magic of movies.
Yeah.
So we're going to wrap up here, but I wanted to throw it back to you before we end and ask what else you have coming up and what do you want people to know about?
What I've got coming up is I'm currently working on writing up my own feature film at the moment called Sanguine, which so far I'm looking at doing my final drafts coming up. Well, hopefully final. But and that one is at the basically just like a horror action kind of film, which I mean, fingers crossed. I'm actually happy with the next draft because I think anyone who's ever done writing knows it's you go, oh yeah, by second or third draft it'll be fine, and then 10 drafts later you're still looking at it going, oh, maybe I should change that bit. And I mean, so far from I've gotten pretty good feedback on that one, including a friend of mine who is probably one of the harshest critics of anything creative I've ever met. Who turned around and absolutely ripped certain bits of it to shreds, which it was heavily needed on it. But yeah, it's that one. I'm hoping to get off the ground soon. I'm also throwing together a little horror short film set in an insane asylum, which should hopefully be getting done next year. And like with that one, small cast, small crew, small budget, hopefully great. And like with that one, I can show off some areas of the effects and so forth. Ideally, I can try and push so I can show some of the things I will be then selling in the lab and stuff as well as added bonus. Outside of that, I mean, like I mentioned before, I'm now starting to go into learning a bit of animatronics and so forth. And I think that's the main thing. Outside of that, a couple of short films on the back burner. And I am also writing a TV pilot for a comedy, it's a dark comedy. So that one is called Life Hack. And ideally that one I should be writing off. I'm most likely going to aiming to sell that one as opposed to work on it personally. But yeah, I want to get the at least try and get that done and out there, because from what I've got of it so far, I think it'll be quite enjoyable.
Well, I'm glad to hear that you're expanding not only within the kind of realm of makeup effects with animatronics and getting the business going and having the prop department, so to speak, but also the writing in creating projects for yourself. That's fantastic. So I want to make sure everyone knows where to find you. And I mentioned Blood Guy FX before, but if you can let everyone know how to contact you or where to see some of your work, that would be great.
Best place to see my work is, I've got the website set up for it, so it's just bloodguyfx.com. I'm now starting to upload images onto my Instagram, which is just at Cameron Dunn FX. And yeah, so those are the two main areas to see a lot of my work. And also on the website, it's got a form so you can contact me directly through that, because at the moment I am the one handling all the emails. So yeah, that would be the best way to contact me on anything. And it doesn't even need to be for hiring me for a project. If you just want to run an idea through saying, hey, I'm shooting in Vancouver. I mean, naturally, I'm in Sydney, Australia, so bit of a distance. But if you just swung an email saying, "Hey, I'm looking at doing this. Would you think it would be feasible on a budget of, say, $100 or whatever?" And I can at least help run through the idea with you, and so see if it is in fact feasible or not. I'm more than happy to answer questions like that if I'm emailed them. But obviously I understand there's a time zone difference, so if I don't get back to you straight away.
Yeah, we were joking at the beginning that I'm calling you from Friday and you're talking to me from Saturday.
The world of tomorrow.
Yes, yes. Well, thanks so much for spending some time with us. I'm really excited to introduce you to the AOF MegaFest world, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the movies.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to support the show, please click on the link below. You can also contact me at my website if you have any questions about filmmaking or anything else. Off to the side, you'll see a couple of my books, Film Notes and the Film Notes Workbook. I encourage you to check those out if you'd like to learn more about filmmaking. See you in the next episode.
Scene 1, Apple, take 1.